do the verse, and then and the translation, and I'll read the purport, Mataji, if that's okay.
Okay. Indulekha Mataji, would you like to do the verse and the translation?
Hare Krishna, the text 38, you mean text 38?
Yes, Mataji, yeah.
Yes, please, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you finish, who is doing the Mangalacharan?
I'm doing Mangalacharan.
Okay, good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Om Gyante Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshulunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lilita Shri Vishakatvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vinnaveshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpa Cheribhishcha Kipa Sindhu Bevacha Patitana Pavana Bhaveshnavebhyo Namo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Ashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadada Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nityananda Avtutanda Vasada Pranavallava Jana Jivanapati Krishna Prabhu Padmavastashashwan Satchinandan Purvaja Bhavamato Jagatata Rakta Gaura Kevara Nityanan Kija Vindai to Stevia Pia Keshvacha Vishnu Bhakti Pati Devi Satyavate Namo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, can I start?
Yes, please, Mataji. Mataji, could you share the verse onto the screen, please?
I can't share the verse on the screen. Prabhuji, can you share it? Because
Yes,
given you the share.
I see what you're saying, Mataji. Yes, one second.
So, Hare Krishna, everybody. We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is the disappearance of Lord Shri Krishna. And today we are on text 38. So, Indulekha Mataji, kindly read the text with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya to begin with. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 14, Text 38. Yad Bahu Danda Bhyudaya Nijuvano Yadu Pravira Hiyakuto Bhayamuhum Adhikramanti Anigrir Bhir Aritam Balat Sabham Sudharmam Sura Sattamochitam. Translation. Can you scroll a bit up, please? Translation. The great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Shri Krishna, always remains fearless in every respect, and therefore their feet tremble over the Sudharma assembly house, which the best demigods deserve, but which was taken away from them. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Indulekha Mataji. I really appreciate you doing the Sanskrit and the translation. So I'll just read the report quickly, and then we can open up the Sangha. Okay, translation to the verse done by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So this is the purport. Those who are directly servitors of the Lord are protected by the Lord from all fearfulness. And they also enjoy the best of things, even if they are forcibly accumulated. The Lord is equal in behavior to all living beings, but he is partial to his pure devotees, being very much affectionate toward them. The city of Dwarka was flourishing, being enriched with the best of the things in the material world. The state assembly house is constructed according to the dignity of that particular state. In the heavenly planets, the state assembly house, called Sudharma, was deserving of the dignity of the best of the demigods. Such an assembly house is never meant for any state on the globe because the human being on the earth is unable to construct it, however far a particular state may be materially advanced. But during the time of Lord Krishna's presence on the earth, the members of the Yadu family forcibly brought the celestial assembly house to earth and placed it in Dwarka, at Dwarka. They were able to use such force because they were certain of the indulgence and protection of the Supreme Lord Krishna. In other words, the Lord is provided with the best of things in the universe by his pure devotees. Lord Krishna was provided with all kinds of comforts and facilities available within the universe by the members of the Yadu dynasty, and in return, such servitors of the Lord were protected and fearless. A forgetful conditioned soul is fearful, but a liberated soul is never fearful, just as a small child completely dependent on the mercy of his father is never fearful of anyone. Fearfulness is a sort of illusion for the living being when he is in slumber and forgetting his eternal relation with the Lord. Since the living being is never to die by his constitution, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 20, then what is the cause of fearfulness? A person may be fearful of a tiger in a dream, but another man who is awake by his side sees no tiger there. The tiger is a myth for both of them, namely the person dreaming and the person awake, because actually there is no tiger. But the man forgetful of his awakened life is fearful, whereas the man who is not forgotten his position is not at all fearful. Thus, the members of the other dynasty were fully awake in the service to the Lord, and therefore there was no tiger for them to be afraid of at any time. Even if there was a real tiger, the Lord was there to protect them. So this is a really, really beautiful verse as well, actually, because we did some sort of reading around and try to understand some of the points that Srila Prabhupada is talking about here. We also tried to relate some of the points to our own sort of life and try to make it a bit more practical. So fearfulness is actually mentioned quite a lot already in this chapter. So at the start of the chapter, you know, when Yudhishthira Maharaj starts noticing signs of different things are happening, and he sort of has sort of an inclination to say that, okay, maybe it's time for Lord Krishna to leave. That's maybe what's happening, because there were like bad things happening. You know, the weather was very bad. It's basically like how it is now. It's like you can't predict the weather's, you know, weather's really bad, and everyone's arguing, you know, and there's disagreement between people. People are doing deceitful things, and, you know, people are being angry, greedy, and sinful. All these different things are going on. So immediately he knew something was up. And these are the kind of things that go on now. So we can kind of relate with that. Like, hold on, all these things are happening now. Lord Krishna is definitely not here. We can relate with that. And, you know, so yeah, so fearfulness was already sort of at the beginning of this chapter. So we can try to think about fearfulness as a key element, one of the key elements in the chapter, I feel. In the verse itself, in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, there's specific significance of the Sudama assembly house. So with that house, there's actually a backstory to this actual house itself. But the benefits of this, the importance of this assembly house is that whoever entered it would be free from the 6 kinds of material pangs, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. So immediately, so this was a very heavenly place to be in, but it was in Dwarka, you know, it was already in Dwarka, and it was brought from the heavenly planets to Dwarka. You know, there's a whole pastime behind it. I think Arjuna fought the Gandharvas or something like that, and then he brought it and then it was brought down. Or I think there's another story is like Indra actually gave it as an offering, and Kuvera gave different elements as well. So all the demigods gave different things to Lord Krishna as a gift for Dwarka, and those things were utilized in Dwarka. Yeah, and those different elements of, there's 6 kinds of material pangs, and they're basically referred to as whips of material existence. And as long as one remained in the Sudharma assembly house, that he would not be affected by these different whips. And so this particular section, or this understanding, or this story, history, is referred to in Krishna book chapter 70. So if anybody wanted to go read more about the Sudharma house, or the setting up of Dwarka, you could read that chapter. Yeah, so after noticing these different things, going back to the fearfulness, Yudhishthira Maharaj also noticed, like, on the left side of his body, his eye was twitching, his arm was shaking, he had some quivering, and those indicated like undesirable things. So sometimes, like, when your eye is twitching, some people say, oh, that's not a good sign, you should and then some people just put their finger on their lid, or just hope that it, or pray that it goes away, or they get like a matchstick and put it on there so it stops quivering, because they consider it to be bad luck. Yeah, and some people like maybe do Gangal Jal or something like that. Yeah, so and then going on to the verse itself, I actually listened to His Holiness Hridayananda Goswami Maharaj, and he was making some very interesting points about the verse, the Sanskrit itself. So he points out that the Yadus were great heroes themselves. So the verse is already saying that they're great heroes, right? So we can understand that they're already great heroes, and someone that's already a great hero, they can just be fearless generally because they're great heroes. They have great power. They're strong, but however, the Yadu dynasty, they were only fearless because of the protection they received from Lord Krishna. So and this is actually referred to in the Yadbahu Danda. Yadbahu Danda, so I mean the Bahu Danda, basically referring to the arms of the Lord. So they're like sticks, so they're like sticks, and they're providing protection. And Bahudaya Anujivano, so that's basically just talks about giving protection. And yes, I'm just thinking Jivano. So the other dynasty is always living. So they're always living under the protection of the Lord, under the protection of the arms of the Lord. So that's why they're fearless, so we can understand that. So they're basically pure devotees, always protected by the Lord. And they were living fortunate lives because of the protection. So if someone was living had a palace like that, was living in Dwarka at that time, and had this fearless mentality, they could get away with basically doing what they wanted to, and they were doing that because they were under the protection of the Lord, despite being valiant warriors themselves. And it's referred to in the verses Akuta Abhaya. So Abhaya means fear, and Abhaya means no fear, and Akuta is like, it doesn't matter what situation it was, they were fearless in all circumstances. So Akuta Bhaya means fearless in, like Prabhupada is saying it, fearless in every respect, fearless in every single situation. So this is basically talking about the living situation of the Yadu dynasty, that they were basically, no one could hurt them because they were under the protection of the Lord. And I was actually just thinking, in terms of like, what other examples of personalities could we think of that were Akuta Abhaya in reference to this? So there, who was fearless and did not worry about danger. So what are the personalities? So feel free to the devotees, please like contribute. So if there's anyone that you can think of, yes, Mataji, that was fearless. That was fearless all the time.
Hare Krishna.
Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah, Mataji, that's it. Prahlad Maharaj, really good example, because His father tried to kill him in so many different ways. He tolerated. He was put into a boiling hot water. He was thrown off of a cliff. He was thrown into a pit of serpents, and he remained fearless in those situations. So he's akuta abhaya, so fearless in all circumstances.
Dhruva Maharaj, he went to the forest.
That's it, Maji. That's exactly. Dhruva Maharaj also went to the forest. If he were to go to the forest, the first thing I'd be thinking about is tarantulas, spiders, for example, or snakes,
Wild animals.
tigers, panthers. Those I'd be like, no, I don't want to go to the forest. I want to go home.
Also, there were the Pandavas who were always fearless because Krishna was
yes,
with
Mataji,
them all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly, Mataji. So there's so many. So we're already talking about the pure devotees of the Lord. So the pure devotees of the Lord are akuta abhaya. So they're always fearless. And even Prabhupada as well. He was fearless. He was fearless because he decided to go at a really old age to the West. That he actually decided to do that at an old age. I don't know how many people would actually do that at an old age, travel across the ocean using sort of transportation that would take you months, and living in it's basically a transport container. The Jaludrit it was not a ferry, it was a transport container, and it was transporting things. So it was not really like a luxury. It wasn't a cruise for Prabhupada. It was not. It was constant noise. In Tamakrishna Maharaj's book, his diary, there's basically a description of what it sounded like. It was basically a constant humming of the engine, loud noise of the engine. Prabhupada basically, just because of the ways, it was like travel sickness. He had the heart attacks also. So he would go through that. Who would go through that to preach Krishna consciousness? So Prabhupada also did it. So Prabhupada was akuta abhaya. So pure devotees are akuta abhaya. So fearless in all circumstances. So that was a really nice point that I thought we should focus on, because I feel like the element of the verse is talking about fearfulness. So the next question is, why do we have fear? So please, the devotees please contribute. Why do you think we have fear? Why do you think we have fear?
Ignorance or lack of knowledge.
That's a good point, Mati. We're going to come to that. Mati. There's a very good point you've mentioned. I'm just going to put it in the chat so we don't.
I think I think we don't have full faith on the Lord. That's why we are fearful. If we depend completely on the Lord, then there will be no fear.
Yeah. Yes, Mataji, that's it. No faith in the Lord. Okay. Complete faith required. Yes, very well. So faith and ignorance, ignorance and knowledge, no faith in the Lord. So complete faith is required for us to be totally fearless. So the reason why we're fearless is ignorance. And the one way to overcome that is actually knowledge. So that's probably an example. But the Bhagavatam actually makes sort of describes why one has fear. So it says in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 11, chapter 2, verse 37, that, so I'll just look for it verbatim. Okay, so it says here, fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as a material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. So when the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. So this is really interesting, so we actually fear because we misidentify with the body itself, aham mameti. So we identify with the body and we become absorbed in the external energy of the Lord, the Maya. We external, basically, you can say absorbed in Maya. And in this verse, Sridhar Maharaj, he actually makes a really nice point, and I thought this is really powerful. And so someone may say, okay, like Mataji was saying, so we have ignorance. So fear is there because of ignorance. And we can remove fear with knowledge. Who agrees with that? Who agrees with we can remove fear with knowledge? I'll put my hand up.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So everyone agrees that we can remove ignorance with knowledge, and fear is basically ignorance. But Sridhar Maharaj says that's actually not the way to remove fear. He's basically saying that we think that it can be, fear is caused by ignorance and it can be dispelled by knowledge, and then but we as devotees, we also someone that's materialistic, they think, okay, hold on, I'm ignorant about something, I have fear about it. The one way to remove that fear is to generate some kind of knowledge to overcome the fear of what's going to happen next in the future, or what's happening in a particular situation, or if I've got a work task to do. If I've got the skill set, the knowledge, then I can overcome the fear of not being able to do that activity, for example. Or we may be fearful of, flying on planes, or, going on a boat, for example. But if we find out how a plane works or speak to the pilot, we get some kind of knowledge, and that generates some comfort, and then we become less fearful. But Sridhar Maharaj says that actually for devotees, or for non-devotees, this is what non-devotees believe, is they believe that fear can be removed, as in ignorance can be removed with knowledge. But as devotees, we know that, okay, as in myself and Samantra, we were discussing this, and we said, okay, some element we can have ignorance about a particular topic, we can have some knowledge, we can work on removing that fear by doing those activities. But from a spiritual point of view, Sridhar Maharaj says that that is not the way. That is not the way to remove fear. Because the materialistic people, they think there's no need to worship a god or Krishna. It's just the fact that we just need to remove ignorance. We just need to be knowledgeable about things, and then we become fearless. And yes, and Srila Prabhupada basically says that living entity falsely identifies with the material body, family, society, and so on. And they may think, okay, someone may be under the impression that for me to give up this fear of being attached to my family, to a car, fame, power, I just need to renounce it. I just give it up. The fear is no longer there. And Prabhupada makes a statement in reference to this, and it's really nice. Bhakti Rasai Sagar Maharaj was with us last week, and he made a really beautiful point. And so Prabhupada's basically saying, some non-devotees, they may think, okay, we can renounce this, I can renounce it, and then I have no fear about this. So I go into a bank, so I may be fearful that I may not have enough money. I won't make enough money, I won't be rich. And I just go into the bank and I say to the bank teller, I renounce all the money in this bank. So that's my entity. So I renounce all the money in this bank. I don't need this money. And what Bhakti Rasai Maharaj is saying, he goes, how can you renounce something that you don't even have? You can't renounce something that you don't have. So if I go to the bank and say, okay, I renounce the money, it's not even mine to renounce. So it's easier for me to renounce that because it doesn't even belong to me. But Bhakti Rasai Sagar Maharaj is saying that it's actually much harder. True renunciation is actually when we have something and then we renounce it. And we renounce it by using it in Krishna's service. He was saying that. And we were discussing that. Okay, so if you have money, it's easy to renounce money that you don't have. But when you have the money, it's harder because you've worked for that money. You went to work for that money, you have bills and everything to pay. So when you gave that money in Krishna's service, it's much harder to renounce because you've worked for that money. So that's true renunciation. True renunciation is giving up something in Krishna's service that belongs, that you have, that you're keeping. That's true renunciation. Yeah. So, and whatever you're holding back. So Krishna doesn't look at what you're going to give him. Krishna looks at what you're holding back. So you have two hands. You have one. Okay, Krishna, you take this. But Krishna's not interested in what's in my left hand. He's interested in what's behind my back in my right hand. Krishna's interested in that. So the Krishna's interested in me renouncing those things that I'm attached to. So, so non-devotees may think, okay, we can renounce we can basically give up this false identification with the body by renouncing it. And then, so in that situation, what can Maya do? What can the material energy do to me? You know, then we can become very confident. And but then Sridhar Maharaj says that he actually responds to the argument by saying, he talks about the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, and it basically, you know, talks about the three modes of material nature, and that they're difficult to overcome, and one who is only surrendered unto Krishna can easily overcome them. So we may think, okay, hold on, we can renounce these things, and we can become over the modes. We cannot be affected by the modes, but that's not true according to Shastra. But then also according to the Bhagavatam. So if you look at the Bhagavatam, it basically states, there's a verse in the Bhagavatam in Canto 1, chapter 1, verse 22, and there's a particular line in text 22. It says Kalim Sattva Harim Pum Sam, and that basically translates to the age of Kali, which deteriorates all good qualities of man. So we can try to be in the mode of goodness. We can try to do that. We can try to emulate that and try to think and do activities in the mode of goodness. But it's according to Shastra, in this age, it will not be possible to sustain that, because it's always deteriorating. The mode of goodness is always deteriorating. So the only way to overcome the modes is to serve Krishna. It's transcendental. We need to go for the transcendental platform. And okay, so going back to this point around fearfulness. Yeah, so, you know, when we misidentify with the body and the external absorption becomes external. So me and Sumantra, we were discussing that, okay, like I was saying earlier, so we may pray to the Lord, but in combination, we may also try to remove ignorance with knowledge. So for example, last week, we had Maharaj staying with us. So we could have thought, okay, we'll just pray to Krishna, and then we'll just serve Krishna, and then eventually Krishna will give us the knowledge to overcome this fear. He will just help us overcome this fear. Who thinks that would work for them? Please, just show of hands. Who think that would work? If we just pray to Krishna to remove our fear, when we don't have knowledge about a particular area and we're ignorant in that particular area. Yeah, Mataji, maybe Mataji, maybe as in we can pray to Krishna, but it's also our duty to undertake the activity to remove the fear. So for example, last 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the etiquette of how to serve a sannyasi. So we may not know the full knowledge about how to serve a sannyasi, or the etiquette, the decorum that you can have. So the best, and we may be fearful because a sannyasi he's a representative of Krishna, and we want to serve him the best we can. So the way to approach it is we can remove the fear by gaining knowledge on how to serve the sannyasi. So it's almost like a balance. So when there's something that can be done to remove the fear, we should do that activity. We should do it. But when there's something that we cannot do, we relieve the result to Krishna. Then we pray. Definitely, we can pray in the mood when we're receiving the knowledge, like, please, Lord, I'm going to understand this particular element of service, and we can pray to the Lord to help us absorb this knowledge, absorb it and use it in the correct way. But it's still our duty to find out about how to do a particular activity. You know, we can't just simply pray and then expect to know everything straight away. As in, like, it's not worked for me yet. That's not worked for me. It's been in a combination, like understand the practice, pray, and then whatever happens, you know, chapter 2, verse 47. You know, whatever you do in service to me, you're not entitled to the results of your action. So you perform the activity, but you don't worry about the result. You relieve the result to Krishna. And that's when the praying comes in. So I just wanted to mention that. So it's not just praying to become fearless. it's also doing the activity to become fearless. It's like we can do the sadhana, but then it's also when, you know, as devotees, we shouldn't think that, well, I'm just going to totally depend on Krishna in the sense that there's no duty of mine. I have no duty. Everything's Krishna is responsible for everything. I'll let him do the hard work, and anything that happens is my karma. It doesn't work like that. That's very that's not, I personally, I don't feel that's the best approach. There has to be some understanding, some endeavor. That's it. That's a perfect word. Thank you. So endeavor is the key element here. So we have to endeavor, and then we leave the results to Krishna, and then we pray, and then we become fearless. Despite whatever happens, we still try to, so even if we do an activity and it doesn't go the way that we want it to go, we still remain grateful. Because even last week, Bhakti Rasayan Sagar Maharaj is saying that we should always have gratitude. So for example, when you cut a finger, we should be grateful that it's not our hand. You know, we should be grateful that it's not our arm. You know, we're grateful that we're still alive, like those kind of elements. So that gratitude is still there, but at the same time, we don't neglect ourselves. We don't spiritually bypass. We don't try to neglect our feelings by saying, okay, I'm grateful, you know, that I didn't die. No, as in we still process the emotion, but we still try to look at Krishna's hand in that. We try to look at what Krishna's trying to teach us, his hand in that situation also, and how we can develop from that situation. Yeah, so we don't just leave everything to Krishna all the time. We have a responsibility, we do our endeavor, and then we leave the rest to Krishna. So I want to talk about those elements, and then Sumantra, she was, because obviously like two of the main reasons why we can have fear is death and time, you know, because Krishna comes in the form of time as death, you know, so we can be fearful of what's going to happen in the future. We can be fearful of when we're going to die, what situation we're going to die in. It's like we were watching the last message from our Guru Maharaj yesterday in the evening, and then you know, just reminded us of a quote that Guru Maharaj says, death is just a change of service. You know, so that's a very elevated way to think. You know, it's like we're taught from a very early stage in Krishna consciousness. So the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita basically states that we're not the body. We're not the body. So we're already taught that at the very start of the Bhagavad Gita. But realizing that, and actually the difference between realizing and understanding it is different. It's totally different. So we can understand, okay, we're not the body. The Bhagavad Gita says, yes, okay, we're not. But actually realizing that we're not the body is there's a big gap. There's a big gap between that. And I've not realized that I'm not the body. I'm definitely still the body. There may be devotees on this call that are on that platform, and I pray to them that I can come to that platform when I realize that I'm not the body. But yeah, so death and time are two of the main elements that create fear. And then we were just reading His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj's book Bhagavata, and we just take a few gems from that concise Bhagavatam. So someone was going to talk about those.
Yeah, it's just like a brief, just a different perspective that how we should approach death. As already Bir Chandra said, that one of the 5-6 paths of material misery is death. So we cannot try to approach. Death can be seen as an inconvenient truth, but also it could be seen as another. There's no need to be seen as an inconvenient truth, but it's also a way to meditate. So death, by meditating on death, we can realize different things. By death, we can understand priority. So death reminds us of our priorities. Instead of like turning things down or delaying things, we should try to prioritize our spiritual life. Yeah, and try to like we were saying, the harsh reality of leaving things behind, our possessions, our profiles, our fame, so that those things do not help us to prioritize our spiritual life. So by meditating on death, what we're gonna take with us when we die, none of the material things. So we should try to focus more on our eternal wealth, which is spiritual life, our sadhana. And then urgency. So urgency, like, so yeah, it goes along the same lines, that what is really important, like what's the urgency, right? There's no point killing time once you realize that time is actually killing you. So when you realize that point is when you try also to prioritize your sadhana and not leave it to later, like, oh yeah, this day, tomorrow, it doesn't matter. You have to have that urgency to make a connection with Krishna. Then humility, because once that comes, it doesn't matter how big is our ego, there won't be any way to fight it back. We just have to take the humble position, and we're gonna be taken away. But we have to come to this realization that once we die, the body is the one that perishes, but our soul is eternal. So we're eternal. So if we perform our sadhana bhakti correctly, we may be able to go back to Goloka Vrindavan. Also, death, what does that give us? It gives us clarity. Through the lens of temporality, we perceive everything and everyone we complain about in new light. So it says, we all have the experience of failing to appreciate things until they have gone. In presence, we tend to focus on faults, but in absence, we see significant value. That can therefore lend us clarity of vision. So that can give us some clarity. And for example, as you already know, we lost our spiritual master not long ago. And one of the recurrent themes is like, we just wasted so much time, like we did not appreciate the time we had with him, right? So it just gave you clarity, you start appreciating, we appreciated even more all his
Kirtans.
his kirtans, we appreciated more all his I forgot the word, all his good qualities, right? So also it gives us clarity. So we try to perceive things in a different way, instead of being negative or just trying to see things perhaps in a way that we're failing. We should try to appreciate things in the way that we're gaining from different people and circumstances, situations. Immunity. So it gives us, like, in the face of permanent expiry, all of our worries and anxieties pale into insignificance. So by being fearless of death means that one is liberated from the fear altogether. So give us immunity. So we don't have to be worried, oh, I'm gonna get sick, or the different things we fear. So by understanding that, is like nothing, all these things, like, really, I shouldn't be fearful of this, because at the end of the day, these are insignificant once we die. Like, nothing is eternal, you just everything's temporary. And it's also give us opportunity. Give us opportunity to break free, that understanding that there is, like we said, that is just when we don't say, hey, you say that Guru Maharaj said, like, that is only a change of service. And once the certainty of that actually sinks in, only then can we truly break free and really live life unbound. So this is a quote that Keshav Swami Maharaj quotes himself about an experience that he had. He was looking after a terminally ill devotee, and this is the realization of the devotee who was very ill. He says, when you get this close to death, you see that it is not what you thought. Throughout life, we fear it, but when you are this close, you see that it is not the end. It is a portal to opportunities beckoning us, a portal beyond which we are able to see our true existence and nature. It is not something negative or destructive. It is the opposite of that, hugely life-affirming. So by the lenses of death, we have the opportunity, or we have the chance to see life from a different perspective, when we understand that we use temporarily, and then many of the things that we worry about, we shouldn't worry that much about. We see life from a different perspective, and we start prioritizing more our spiritual life. Not that we have got there, but
but as in the meditation.
The meditation is there. So I think it's a very powerful meditation. And also here, Keshav Swami states that although we know that we're going to die, is something inevitable, that we're going to die, our loved ones are going to die. The statistics say that 70% people die without leaving a will, writing a will. So that means that, what does that mean? That really something we try to avoid talking about death. It is something that we're fearful of, because like, who is not afraid of death, right? Like, scary even thinking like, oh, even myself, like I think about when my mom dies, how I'm gonna feel, how things are gonna change. But we should try to see from a different perspective. And like it says, like, can give us, for example, I could prioritize time with her, give me an urgency to not take it for granted, be humble around her. Try to take these different meditations and make the most of the time we have with different people. Right?
Yeah. So this is basically the end, Mataji. So we're just trying to focus on those elements. Sudama Assembly Hall was mentioned, trying to give a backdrop, an understanding of that, the reason why that hall was important. There's actually a really nice pastime as well. So obviously, Sudama Assembly is actually located in Dwarka, and we know that Krishna had 16,000 wives, and every wife had a palace. And the palace, all the different palaces were in Dwarka, and this is a nice pastime that's actually was described. So whenever Krishna would be with a particular queen, so these houses were sort of in rows and possibly opposite each other also. So whenever Krishna was in one of these particular houses in Dwarka, in the city, only the individuals in the same palace could see Krishna, and the neighbor. So the neighbor and the person in the same palace could see Krishna. And so there's like 16,000 Krishnas in the city, in the different palaces. But when it came to Sudama house, so when Krishna was walking to Sudama house, what would happen is, before he entered the Sudama house, all the 16,000 expansions of the Lord, they would basically go into one, and then Krishna would enter the assembly and sit on the throne, and there'll be like sort of different plays, performances, ballets, musical instruments being played, and he was basically the king on the throne there. So it was just a nice meditation to think of Dwarka, Krishna in Dwarka, the different expansions of Krishna with his pure devotees, with his queens, and the opulence as well of the city. And then when we look at, so maybe we can think about Sudama house, Krishna's going into Sudama house, and then all the different expansions of Krishna, they go into one, and then Krishna enters Sudama house. So that was a really nice, I thought that was really powerful, because Krishna's, in Vrindavan is different mood, and in Dwarka is different mood, and Krishna in Dwarka is a king. So, and then he enters that assembly house, and that assembly house has all these different qualities, and it's heavenly. So it was just really nice. So I thought I'd share that. And so we understood a little bit of Sudama house when Prabhupada's referring to it in the purport. And then we touched on fearfulness, why we're fearful, why the Yoda dynasty weren't fearful, because they were protected by Krishna's arms, the two sticks, the dandas, Bahu Danda, the two arm sticks, of Krishna. They were fully protected, despite them being valiant warriors. So we can think, okay, I'm powerful, I'm a powerful person, but a powerful person can stay a powerful person, as long as they are living by the principles. So that's also a nice, important message to take away from that is, okay, the other dynasty were living by principles. They had values, certain values, and they were pure devotees under the protection of Krishna. So they were fearless, despite being valiant warriors themselves. So they were valiant warriors. Okay, that's fine. We accept that. But then they were fearless because of Krishna. They weren't fearless because of themselves. So we can also have this meditation, have this understanding that, okay, we can be very skilled, we can be very knowledgeable, we can have opulence, we can have fame, we can have power, but that will only last, and we can only be fearful in those situations, fearless in those situations, when we're protected by Krishna. And to be protected by Krishna, we have to follow the instructions of Krishna. So this is a really nice, important thing that I sort of related to, is this is relayed to us, you know, in many talks, and even Kripa Moya Prabhu recently in Guru Maharaj Vyas Puja ceremony in the Bhaktivedanta Mana. He was saying that the Guru, as in the Guru, is always with us. He's always with us as long as we follow his instructions. So as long as we follow Guru's instructions, he's always with us. So that was like just a really powerful meditation to have. So Krishna is a representative of the Guru is a representative of Krishna. Sorry. And so Guru is with us. So if Guru is with us, Krishna is with us. And if Krishna is with us, then we can become fearless. Then we're fearless. So we can also think, okay, if I'm following my Guru's instructions, I can be fearless. And we can carry out our daily responsibilities. I can go to work. I can make money. And this is a really nice point that His Holiness Bhakti Rasayan Sagar Maharaj said. He goes, back in the day when the Kurukshetra war was happening, Krishna was basically killing all the scrupulous kings. And that was the battle. That was the battle then. But he goes, the battle today is, the Kurukshetra war today is actually us taking, so this is from a sort of, so those who are interested in sort of generating wealth, so we can take wealth from materialistic people and use that in Krishna's service. So we can also generate wealth, because Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was a very, very rich king, but he used everything in Krishna's service. So we can utilize our work, anything we get from work, we can utilize that in Krishna's service. And then if we want to move forward in our career, in our life, we can do that fearlessly, as long as we're following the instructions of the scriptures, Guru Sadhu Shastra. So I feel like that was a good meditation to have, and a reflection in regards to this. Yeah, so that, and then we talked about why we have fear. We have fear because we're conditioned. We're sort of relating to the body, and it's not just about removing ignorance with knowledge. We remove ignorance with knowledge when it comes to doing a particular activity. We have to do the endeavor, we have to generate the knowledge, and we pray to Krishna to receive that knowledge, to give us that knowledge, for us to process that knowledge. But then we leave the result to Krishna, but we still pray. We still may have some fear, and we can process that fear by generating knowledge with Krishna's blessings, but then also praying to Krishna, being unattached or being detached from the result of that, and then accepting or trying our very best to accept Krishna's reciprocation, and then trying to understand the lesson that Krishna is trying to teach us from that. And yeah, so just that. So what is Krishna trying to teach me? So there's a few things that we touched on. Hopefully I summarized it nicely for the devotees. And yeah, so any questions from the devotees? Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhuji. This has been a very thought-provoking class. It has, at least me, started making us think about the situation. And first of all, I'd like to thank you about introducing Sudharma Assembly, because I didn't know about this place ever existed. So thank you very much for that. And it's a great meditation. You can see Krishna just joining up and then going on to his stream. So thank you very much. Prabhuji, your point on renunciation. So you said that you renounce whatever you have. I mean, obviously in the bank, if you go and say, okay, I renounce all this money, it's easy to say that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But what about your parents and your children, and how do you renounce that in Krishna consciousness?
That's a really nice question, Matadi. So this is me going back, referring to something that was said at our Guru Maharaj's Vyasa Puja ceremony. And he was saying that he was talking about grieving. Kripa Mahaprabhu was talking about, His Grace Kripa Mahaprabhu was talking about grieving and how we should be feeling in relation to grief. And someone might say to you, because of, this is there's different perspectives on the scripture. So in the scripture, when Abhimanyu was killed, Arjuna was crying. He was crying, and then he was basically relating a pastime in reference to Srila Prabhupada. And he said, one time, one of Prabhupada's disciples asked him, and he said, in reference to this situation that happened, this history, that why was Arjuna crying when Abhimanyu was killed? And then Prabhupada said, because he was his son. But this devotee didn't understand still. And he said, Prabhupada, I still don't understand, but why was he crying? And then Prabhupada said to him, because he was his son. So Prabhupada's basically saying that just because we're devotees, it doesn't mean that we're emotionless. We shouldn't just falsely renounce family. We shouldn't falsely, I have I have family members also. I'm not going to renounce my family members because I do have connection. I'm a jiva. I do have emotions, and so I wouldn't pass off that emotion. I wouldn't sort of spiritually bypass that emotion and try to negate that emotion or try to kill that emotion by forcefully applying scripture to it, because that's not going to help me on a mental platform, because I'm still on the body platform. Because I'm still on the body platform, I still need to process the emotions. I still need to understand how I'm feeling, and then I can move. Then I can move forward in my Krishna consciousness. So Kripa Mahaprabhu was saying that, some devotee might say to you, because our spiritual master passed away, and they might say, you should be happy because he's going back to Goloka Vrindavan. And then they could be like, why are you sad? You should be happy. And then another devotee might come up to us and say, why are you happy? You should be sad. Your spiritual master's left. So, and he said, none of those are incorrect. None of those are incorrect, he said. So I thought that was very powerful. So I hope that answers your question, Matthew. So when it comes to renunciation, we shouldn't falsely renounce our family. If there's like a situation, like a really bad, unhealthy environment, then we can create distance from our family. But at the same time, it's Krishna, it's our karma to be in that family. And I'm not saying that, we should accept the karma, as in we have to, because that's the situation, but we should also try to process the emotions and try to create a healthy environment for ourselves, because without a healthy environment for ourselves, we cannot practice Krishna consciousness. We cannot practice it. Yeah. So yeah.
Yes. So at that point, how do we renounce family? I think when we have the understanding that when we hear the word renouncing means like a cut, I'm not going to speak to that person anymore. Like they cannot see me. I don't think it's that way, because we have the example of Urmila Mataji, for example, who lives in America, I think. It doesn't mean that we're not in touch with our family and inquire how they are. Like when you enter, for example, Vanaprastha ashram and you focus more on your spiritual life, it doesn't mean that you do not speak to them or you meet them. It's just more like you tend to focus more on your spiritual life. You tend more to, you start detaching in the sense, well, they have their own life now. They have their own family. I should worry more about my spiritual welfare. Is in more the aspect. And I guess we have example, the example of sannyasis, that some of them were grahasta, they were married previously before entering the sannyas ashram. And they definitely cut completely their connections, but because that vow requires that, for example, they should not associate with women anymore. But for example, there are sannyasis who have children, like that doesn't mean that they're not in touch with them, inquire how they are, the grandchildren. It's just your focus should be more on Krishna consciousness and understanding. But they have always said, like, they are just an instrument that Krishna is giving me. Krishna is giving them to me to take care of them, but they are not mine. I'm just they have been sent to me to be raised into Krishna consciousness. I just been looked after.
Yeah, it's also an element of sort of preaching by example. It's prachara as well. It's like, so if I was to just renounce my family and cut off all ties, they're going to think Krishna consciousness is a bad path to follow. You know, sometimes you see brahmacharis joining the ashram and they don't speak to their family for years. You know, and their family think the devotees are not nice people. You know, so it's important to process the renunciation in the correct way. So that's why we have different ashrams, like Samantra was saying. We have Vanaprastha ashram. We have that for a reason. It's the training that's required. But then also, this is a nice point that I think we focused on in the last sangha that we had, was a sannyasi gives up primary family relations to accept a bigger family, the whole world as the family. So it's not sort of a narrow focus, it's a widening focus. It widens the sort of the field, the vision, like it expands the ability to be Krishna conscious. It doesn't narrow it, it expands it. And I think that's an important element, is to expand our Krishna conscious, not to narrow our Krishna conscious by falsely trying to renounce connections or being overly hard on ourselves and trying to false, like monkey renunciation, false. Bhogatyaga, Raghunath Goswami talks about this in the Nectar of Devotion. Panchali Mataji, please feel free. Thank you, Mataji, for your question. Thank you so much. Hopefully that answered your question. Panchali Mataji, thank you. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Again, apologies because of work. I always end up joining late. I completely, is it possible? Is it okay if I just make a comment?
Yes, Mataji, please. Please do make a comment.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So first of all, what you just mentioned on Mataji's question, I completely agree with that. And such a beautiful passing around Arjun and what Mataji said as well. And I was just reflecting on this point, and I was thinking that, the Lord gives us instructions through examples. And that is the reason we see why Krishna was so much attached to Yashoda, Mother Yashoda, and he never ever neglected that. Why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to his mother Satimata and did not move to Vrindavan and stayed in Jagannath Puri, because he respected his mother so much. So despite taking up sannyasi, becoming a sannyas, he respected the fact that that she was his mother, and his primary duty was also to look after his mother. And when asked by one of his disciples as to why he was listening to his mother and still being attached to his mother when he has renounced everything, he did teach to the disciple that, she is my mother, so I have to respect her in that. But at the same time, although we do renounce everything, we all have to remember that she's Krishna's property. So she's a part and parcel of Krishna. So my duty is to make Krishna happy. So by taking care of her, I'm making Krishna happy. So we do have family members, but we just need to think of them as belonging to Krishna as opposed to directly belonging to us. But the points you made, it just kind of made me reflect on the fact that, both Krishna and Ram as well, how much he respected his parents to listen to them. So through all the yugas, every time the Lord descended, he gave examples as to how to take care of the family members, especially parents, even through renouncing, even becoming a sannyasi. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Mataji, it's really, really beautiful point, Mataji. Thank you so much for contributing. I really appreciate that, Mataji, 100%. Yeah, you're right. And also, like, what I also got from your comment, Mataji, is like, the devotees are always interested in making the devotees happy. They're always interested in the welfare of the devotees and the welfare of other people. It's like they're so interested in that. It's like when Maharaj was here, there was one evening where the devotees didn't honor prasadam. Maharaj was so upset. He was so upset. And after that day, I didn't let a devotee go back home without eating prasadam, because he cared a lot about the devotees, cares a lot about the devotees. And even when it comes to preaching, so Maharaj went to an Ayurvedic clinic there. This individual was not a devotee. He was favorable. So Maharaj, requested the devotees to make a cake for this person. So Maharaj offered it to Giriraj, his Shila, and then he gave this cake to this Indian-bodied non-devotee, and he fed it to his family, and he said, thank you. So the sannyasi is interested in the welfare of everyone. And so we should also be interested in the welfare of everybody, especially the devotees. Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji and Mataji. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know we have exhausted our time, but if you can remind us about the 6 banks of material.
Yeah, sure, Mataji. Yeah. So just give me a moment. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thirst, hunger. It's lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. Hunger, thirst, lamentation.
Hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age. Yes, copy.
Old age, yeah. We'll just pop it into the chat, Mataji. Except for the first one. Yes. Okay, here we go, Mataji. So those are them. It's interesting. It's interesting. We become fearful when there's hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. Old age and death we get 100%. Lamentation, where's the fear in that? So we're just thinking also about that. Where would the fear come from there? Even the illusion, where would the fear come? Because I think illusion, it's almost like self-pity, like a negative attitude. So that's almost like a sort of a reflection of fear. Yes, so just sorry, Matthew, so those we've pasted them in there. If there's any other questions from the devotees, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask us.
I think there are no more questions.
Thank you.
I can hand over to Path Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Are you able to unmute and end the session? Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your nice class. Talking about the Sudharma Sabha, how it is so beautiful and not in material platform, and everything is there. And Sudharma Sabha, about the scriptures also, there are many things about the Sudharma Sabha, like you indicated in the Krishna book.
Yes.
Also, you're talking about the fearlessness of the devotees. Obviously, when there is a Krishna and all the devotees are fearlessness. So that is Abhay Charana Arabinda. Is giving the, like you are giving the example of Prahlad Maharaj and others also. So when we surrender to Krishna, there is no fear at all. And also your nice example ensures of the renunciation in all respect, like our family, like everything. And also the Maharaj, how they are renunciation, everything is there. So it's such a nice class, wonderful class, Prabhuji. Thank you very much once again. Also, thanks all the devotees who are joining here. I request all the devotees, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for glorification of His grace. Bir Chandra Prabhuji, please join.
Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhayeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Motivation ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Grace Bir Chandra Prabhuji ki jai.
Iskon Eldred ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a good weekend. Hare Krishna ji.
We'll see you in another fortnight.
Yeah, see you soon, Mataji. Hare Krishna.